Week of the Clash continues with P. Diner and Ernest Owens. P. Diner is, of course, a royal YouTube sensation. Ernest is the author of the book The Case for Cancel Culture. And now, in the second part of our explosive conversation, have the royal family lost respect in America? P. Diner, you get to start this time. 1 minute to you. Oh, actually, did you start last time, P. Diner?
Yes, I did.
Sorry, that's my fault. Ernest, you get to start this time. 1 minute, over to you.
Yeah, I think the royal family has. I think right now there is a growing level of disdain towards the royal family, and not so much because of Meghan Markle. I think initially there was a lot of pushback towards Meghan Markle's celebrity with Prince Harry and them coming to the US. But I think there's been an overwhelming amount of disdain due to Prince Andrew and the Epstein files. And I think so much of the current conversation is shifting towards there because he's done something that is alleged criminal behavior. There was an arrest on his birthday. And I think at this point, people are really focused on not just the speculations and the rumors and the gossip, but some legitimate, real worldly crimes that has people shook to their core. And I think the U.S. is losing a lot of respect for the royal family based on how they're handling this and also the way that people are viewing Prince Andrew.
P. Diner, over to you. 1 minute. Why the royal family has not lost respect in America?
I think they see what is happening with the royal family exactly as what is happening here in America. I think, if anything, they are applauding what is happening over in the royal family because they have actually done something about the things that have happened over here in the States. Nothing has happened to anyone around this whole Prince Andrew scandal except Ghislaine Maxwell, and they are questioning, well, why hasn't anyone here in this, in America been put in or been accused of any allegations on the legal stage or come to Congress about what has actually happened. Like, there hasn't been any dialogue really about it, and it's mostly abroad. And so I think the people in America are looking at what's happening over in Great Britain and thinking, well, they're doing something about it and we are not. So I think they're looking up to the royals at this point.
Okay, P. Diner, time up. And I'm going to come straight to you on that one, Ernest. Actually, P. Diner's right, isn't she? When I hear from Americans at the moment, they're like, you guys are actually doing something. Wow, even a prince has had his title stripped, has been arrested, has effectively lost everything. And in America, Ernest, I don't see anyone in power, be it Katie Couric or Bill Gates or Bill Clinton or George Stephanopoulos, any of those people at those dinner parties or on Epstein's island, taking responsibility, owning up, losing everything. So hasn't actually what's happened with Andrew maybe enhanced respect for the British royal family?
Well, I think that you have to get into the details of what's being said. So it's one thing to go to dinner, and it's another thing to be connected to actual improper behavior. So I wanted to, you got your lawyers and your legal folks, so we can't equivocate Katie Couric to
no, but she still went to dinner with a child sex trafficker. I'm not accusing her of illegality. I'm accusing her of immoral behavior.
Okay, but she wasn't aware of the time, one would argue, and there is a difference in the timeline. There's a timeline, but regardless of that, though, right? Again, let's be very clear. One could say the same about those who was around Donald Trump back in the day. I mean, are you going to equate any person that met the person there? I think there's a specific difference in Prince Andrew's alleged behavior connected to those behaviors of some of the people you named.
Hey, so I think Trump acted incredibly when it came to Epstein, though.
Listen, he's the president of the United States, and I agree that there should be more accountability towards him. But that being said, I don't think that the way that the courts are handling it in Great Britain is not what's being critiqued. I think it's just the royal family has come with so much drama and so much mess that I think Americans are just not invested in them in the same way. So how they're handling Prince Andrew isn't some level of renewal for them having an up level of respect. I think that this country is really over dictatorships and any type of monarchies, including the monarchy that we're currently experiencing in the US. I think people are just over the fact that there's so much rich, entitled people that are getting away with things and being shielded. And if you think about the response around Prince Andrew that has been taking place for years, this was the final shoe that dropped.
I mean,
Would you
Trump's
agree?
the
I mean,
democratically
you're doing his work
elected
for over a year.
president. So he's, this claim that he's in some way running a monarchy is a radical leftist talking point. But let's leave that to one side because that's not what we're debating today.
Sure. Okay. Well, I
But
disagree.
P. Dina, doesn't Ernest have a point that actually, after the death of the late Queen Elizabeth II, Charles's reign has been a mess? Like, you've got the Harry and Meghan allegations. He didn't deal with them. He then invited Harry back to have, like, coffee with him, tea with him.
Exactly.
And that was really dodgy. And then he brought Andrew back into the fold. Like, Andrew and Fergie, P. Dina, were actually attending these royal events. They were there front and center at Christmas. Do you remember that memorial service that the Queen and Charles and Catherine and William could not attend because of their health reasons? The most senior members of the British royal family were Andrew and Fergie. And for Americans, they must be thinking, what are you doing, Charles? Like, why are you putting this guy front and center?
And that's before
I just think that they really are questioning what he has done. And at this point, I think William has done a lot behind the scenes to help save the monarchy right now, things that we don't really know up front, but we know that he's behind a lot of things. He's been pushing his father to do a lot of things to get ahead of these stories, because it is going to even get worse, believe it or not. So at this point, the royals, the king, I believe in his best interest and of that of the monarchy is to, abdicate.
Well, you have raised such an important point, though, P. Dina, and I will come to the abdication question because it's really important. But before I do, Ernest, William and Catherine, they're the two people you don't want to name. And I know why you don't want to name them, Ernest, because you've just got to look at the popularity polling in the United States of America, and they are pretty much the most respected celebrities in all of America. Far more respected than any of your politicians. I'm talking amongst Americans. Far more respected than any politician. And they are the future, Ernest. And guess what? Their hands are clean. William and Catherine only did the right thing about Andrew. 7 years ago, after that Newsnight interview, William lobbied for Andrew to be banished from the royal family. So what do you have to say about those two, Ernest? Because they're the future. Charles is not.
I don't care. And I'm not going to disagree with you on the issue. I just don't care.
Do you like them? Do you respect them?
I think that there's been things that I've heard and I've read that hasn't been the best, but I do have a lot of sympathy for Kate and what she dealt with cancer. And I think that there's a lot of people who did have a lot of sympathy for her, including myself. I have family members and people who have experienced cancer in such a way. And so I think there was a level of public sympathy for her. But I also want to add that the press, which again, I didn't feed into, questioned some of the ways that there was coverage around her announcement and the photos being doctored and the way that was. And I never got into that mess because I do feel like at the end of the day, listen, I'm going to believe them. I'm going to believe her. I'm not going to take in all of the negative narratives because it has been given to other parts of the family beyond just Meghan Markle and Harry. And I just believe that some of what's been going on has helped. But I do think
but why have you raised that, Ernest, out of interest? Genuine question. Why have you raised that then? Because that was revolting what they did to Catherine.
But that's the point. I'm showing the model behavior and the grace that I think people should give all of these royal individuals, except Prince Andrew. I don't agree with that. But I think we should expose. Like, I'm not someone, like I've heard people on liberals and people on the left that will go tit for tat with either side because they felt like some of the ways that Prince William has treated Harry or has been alleged of treating Meghan. I don't get into that. I don't get into that because I do believe that there should be some level of humanity for everyone involved. And so I think that in this current situation,
but surely you can condemn the treatment of Catherine. And a lot of that came, by the way, from your type of heroes, Ernest. Like, I'm sure you love Stephen Colbert, who's an ally of Meghan and Harry. And he went on American television. I'm glad he's been axed and he's been
I don't.
booted from American TV
American
because he
democracy,
went on
never
American
appreciate-
TV, Ernest,
Are you
and
supporting
he
cancel culture?
claimed that Catherine was faking it.
Listen, I don't agree
Wow.
with
Yeah,
the tone
that's
and tone. I'm
scary.
not really a spokesperson for any of these individuals. But, you know, what I was going to say to you earlier is that
But do
that's
you
not reflecting
condemn
everybody.
it?
I don't think it was right. I think it was tacky. I wouldn't go out my way to question someone's cancer diagnosis the same way that I wouldn't, you know, put someone's baby as a monkey. I think all of these things, this level of polarization, is what's inspiring my second book. I have a second book coming out
Oh
called
God, what's it called? What's it called?
Divided We Stand, How Stan Culture Has Eroded into Social Political Chaos. My book
Is that like
talking about
Stan as an STAN?
yes,
And
Divided We
explain
Stand.
what that means. So that means basically people who fanboy or fangirl over a particular person or ideology. Is that what you mean?
Correct. Obsessive. Yeah, they're very obsessive. They're very deranged fans. So like the Barbs or stands for Nicki Minaj, or Trumpers or obsessive stands for Trump. We see
Okay,
these
I've got a
things-
really important question for you, Ernest. Please tell me that you have included the Sussex Squad in your book, because they are the worst stands in the world and the biggest
They're not the
internet
worst.
troll. And they
Yes,
were the
they
ones that were
are.
spreading the lies
worst.
about Catherine, the Princess of Wales.
Dan Wootton raises a series of claims that deserve closer examination, not because they are sensational, but because of what they imply. In this discussion, he and his guests argue over whether the British royal family has lost respect in America, whether Meghan Markle remains central to that decline, and whether the monarchy's real reputational crisis now lies elsewhere, particularly with Prince Andrew, institutional inconsistency, and the wider culture war that surrounds the family. But the most revealing part of this exchange is not simply what is said about individual personalities. It is what the conversation suggests about the monarchy as a modern institution, about media incentives on both sides of the Atlantic, and about how easily public debate can become trapped between scandal, identity, and spectacle. Because beneath the noise, there is a more serious question. Not whether one side wins the argument, but whether the monarchy and the media ecosystem around it can still distinguish between accountability, celebrity conflict, and institutional survival. The first thing to note is that Dan's segment frames the issue as a contest between two explanations for royal decline in America. One is Prince Andrew, a deeply serious reputational burden with legal, moral, and institutional consequences. The other is Harry and Meghan, a continuing source of grievance, publicity, and controversy. And in one sense, that framing is useful, because it exposes a genuine tension inside royal commentary. For years, much of the discussion around the Sussexes has operated at the level of symbolism, emotion, and narrative. But Andrew is different. Andrew is not a branding problem. He is not a public relations headache in the ordinary sense. He is an institutional stress test. He raises questions about judgment, access, protection, and delay. And once that kind of scandal enters public consciousness, it changes the scale of everything else. That appears to be one of the key fault lines in this debate. Because one argument says, whatever one thinks of Meghan Markle, Andrew has done more damage to the monarchy's standing than almost anyone else. And that is not an unreasonable point. It shifts the focus away from personality wars and toward institutional credibility. It asks whether the monarchy's deepest threat is not criticism from outside, but hesitation, inconsistency, and protection from within. At the same time, Dan and his other guest push in a different direction. They suggest that Charles's handling of both Andrew and the Sussexes has projected weakness, and that this perceived weakness has itself become part of the problem. In that reading, the danger is not simply scandal. It is drift. A sense that the monarchy has been reactive rather than decisive. And that is where Prince William enters the conversation not just as an individual, but as a projected solution. He is presented here as discipline, clarity, and future-facing control. Catherine is presented as dignity under pressure. Together, they function in the argument not merely as popular figures, but as a kind of corrective image, order after chaos, restraint after drama, continuity after reputational damage. That is strategically important. Because when institutions face scandal, they often survive not by disproving every criticism, but by embodying a more stable alternative. In other words, the future becomes part of the defense. But there is another layer to this exchange, and it is perhaps the most revealing one. The discussion repeatedly returns to race, media treatment, and the question of who gets believed.
The worst, but they are going to be discussed to some
They
extent.
are the worst. Have you
I
seen
live in the
threat
U.S.
that they have
I will
given?
tell you, if you live in the U.S., people will say the K-Hive or MAGA Trumpers. The K-Hive for Kamala Harris, they would say either them or they would say Bernie Bros for Bernie Sanders, or they will, of course, say MAGA Trumpers. I mean, January 6th.
But do you criticize the
You've never
Sussex Squad?
seen. So my book actually says that stan culture isn't going to cross any fences. All of the derangement on all sides, I don't agree with. I don't agree with the extremists of the K-Hive. I don't agree with the extremists of MAGA. I don't agree with the extremists of the Sussex Squad. I don't agree with the extremists for those of the royal family. I think any of these extreme stan groups are problematic across the board. I think
Well, you need to put Sussex Squad in your book.
They're going to be referenced. They're in the book. I'm going to talk about them. Everyone's going to get an equal level, just like my book, The Case for Cancel Culture.
Good, because they tried to destroy my life, the Sussex Squad, on lies. And
listen, every time I go on your show, I get the same amount of banter. There's a crazy anti-Meghan hate group that come after me in my DMs. I can show you the receipts, Dan. They're crazy. They're going to be crazy after this. They're going to go piling on me. You see it on Twitter, on X. Like, it's instant.
I think there are real people actually who've had to fight back. And I think the Sussex Squad use bots and use paid PR. And I think it's a very, very dark, dodgy world. But it is an interesting point, isn't it, P. Dinah? Because you've got these different gangs or gangs of stans, as Ernest describes them. And I do wonder if the Sussex Squad, P. Dinah, have won a little bit in America. I don't think they've won in the United Kingdom, but are they winning in America because they have put out so much nasty stuff about the British royal family?
I don't know that I would say that they're winning, but they definitely have made their voices heard in a loud way because of the tactics that they use with the bots and everything. But I think the main issue is Harry and Meghan should denounce a lot of their bad behavior. They have done some very criminal and egregious things towards people, and they should be told by the people that they are following that what they are doing is not okay. But yet Harry and Meghan have yet to say anything about the behavior of their fans. And that's not a good thing. I think that is just fueling it by being silent on it.
Yeah, Ernest, do you agree with that? I mean, I know you're obviously looking at lots of different types of stands, but do you agree that the celebrity or the politician in question should call out criminality, bullying, racism, whatever it happens to be, from their stan communities? Because Harry and Meghan have not once condemned the Sussex Squad, yet they constantly go on about the need for, censorship of the internet and stuff.
I mean, if there is any legitimate claims and reports, which again, in all of these different standards, whether I agree with the person or not, I mean, there should be a level to tone the temperature down. And I think that in so many different ways, to ignore it is a disservice to the public. I don't necessarily know how far the Sussex Squad has gone all the way, but I have read various reports about it. I know that there is both sides of this conversation. There is these fighting groups online, because I've experienced the opposite. I think people that speak in favor of Meghan Markle, even in the US, there is going to be a barrage of a British invasion of a certain subset of people. But I will also say that I do know the people that do go hard for Meghan Markle and Harry, and they go to extremes too. And I think that these polarizing extreme ends of it, I think, is not helping the conversation, and it does not help with safety. I think it gets nasty. And that's why I said earlier that I'm not a stan, right? Where I wanted to acknowledge that even if I do disagree with some things that Prince William has done, I do feel like some of the narratives around his wife, Kate, and all of the family in that regard, I think that some of that was below the belt and low in ways that reminded me of how people went low with Meghan. And I don't support that.
Okay, well, I'm glad to know that. Let's return to the issue of abdication, which P. Dinah raised. Now, surely that would destroy your argument, Ernest, because if you've got a young King William, a young Queen Catherine, They've got their 3 beautiful children. I actually think that's the thing that would immediately revitalize the British royal family in the United States. I think there would be absolute hysteria over that. And I think that's what anti-monarchy people like you, Ernest, are afraid of. Because look, as you've heard, I agree with a lot of your arguments when it comes to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But we've got this perfect family waiting there, and I don't think you know how to deal with that.
Listen, I don't care enough to be that personally invested in whether they do or don't. But the question becomes, is Charles going to do it? Well, he should. I mean, to be fair, he should abdicate. I think that he should. It's time, you know. I think he should. That would be the smart thing to do strategically, and I would agree that there would be some good faith restored for the British family if he did immediately, because he is in many ways the individual who's kept this Prince Andrew dynamic going. I mean, he could have really excluded him. I think for Americans, a lot of people saw a double standard. And this is what I was saying earlier. There's been a lot of smoke for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and some of that is warranted and some of that is not. The family dynamics, I get it. However, for us Americans to see all of this disdain and division towards Prince Harry, and to see Prince Andrew getting a seat at the family, even before the rest, but all these allegations.
It's disgusting.
Things that they were distant.
It's disgusting.
It was making us feel like there was a double standard, and
it's
also
disgusting.
did not help.
And for royalists and monarchists, I couldn't agree more with you. It's absolutely disgusting. But Ernest, what I'm really interested in, and this genuinely isn't a loaded question, I'm just genuinely fascinated. Like, what is it that you think Harry and Meghan bring to the world? What do they do positively? Because I remember when they Mexited, they said it was all going to be about, service and changing the world. All I see is them punting crappy products, flying on private jets to go and deliver speeches to be paid $50,000 a pop. Like, seriously, what are Harry and Meghan doing that's good for the world?
Well, I think that, they do some humanitarian work, but I think that
Not
a lot
much.
of this, I think for me, I question all of it. That's what you said. I was anti-monarchy. You're right. I'm for democracies, because I do think in some ways it does feel like a grift. Like, people are paying money to keep this oligarchy, this wealthy subset of the country, at a time where there's poverty and division, and yet people are paying money to keep people like, at one point in time, Prince Andrew afloat. And I just think, for what? What has Prince Andrew done outside of partying on islands and being a creep? But yet people's money have to go towards keeping them there. I think the grief is up. And I think that for me, it's not so much about what Meghan and Harry do. I argue that a lot of what they've been given so much attention that I just think it's ridiculous. I think they're overrated. I think monarchies are overrated. I think that all of this is overrated. And I think, quite frankly,
brilliant, Ernest.
I'm annoyed with it.
They're great. We
Everybody.
don't want a president. We don't need a president. We leave that to you. But look, this has been an absolutely fascinating debate. I really do appreciate you both going head to head in the clash. Ernest Owens is, of course, the author of the book, The Case for Cancel Culture. Go and check your dates, Ernest. I know I was the first person to put you on British television, okay? Piers Morgan copied me because I remember being at GB News at the time and thinking, this is so typical of Piers. He watches what I do and then he goes and uses you. So you need to go and check those dates, Ernest, because I'm not going to have that.
You actually might be right.
We discovered you, okay?
You can.
And P. Diner is, of course, the royal YouTube sensation who can be found on YouTube, PDINA. Let's do this again. Thank you very much. A superb clash.
And here the conversation becomes less about the monarchy itself and more about the wider collapse of trust in public discourse. One side argues that Meghan Markle's claims about racism were false or exaggerated. The other argues that racial bias need not be formal, explicit, or universally provable to be real. And the collision between those two positions shows how difficult this subject remains. Because once a discussion moves from evidence into lived experience, and from lived experience into media amplification, the argument quickly stops being about one incident and becomes a referendum on entire systems of interpretation. That matters because institutions do not only lose authority through scandal. They also lose authority when large sections of the public no longer agree on the meaning of events. And that seems to be what this debate reveals most clearly, not consensus, but fragmentation. In Britain, the monarchy is judged through one historical lens. In America, it is often judged through another: celebrity, race, status, and anti-elite politics. So when commentators ask whether the royal family has lost respect in America, they may be asking the wrong question. Respect from whom? Americans do not experience the monarchy as a constitutional structure. They experience it as a media object. For some, it is pageantry. For others, hypocrisy. For others still, a screen onto which broader anxieties about privilege, race, and power are projected. That makes the American response unstable by definition. It is shaped less by duty than by narrative. And that is why the Andrew issue is so dangerous. Because in an American context, where elite impunity is already a live political grievance, Andrew does not look like a family embarrassment. He looks like confirmation of a system protecting itself. That is difficult to neutralize with symbolism alone. The conversation also touches, briefly but importantly, on the treatment of Catherine during her illness. And here there is a lesson the wider culture has still not fully absorbed. When conspiracy, factional loyalty, and online mobilization replace restraint, even serious human suffering becomes content. That was not a failure of one camp only. It was a failure of the digital environment itself, an environment in which every absence becomes suspicion and every ambiguity becomes ammunition. And that may be the real takeaway from this entire exchange. The modern monarchy is no longer operating in a world where silence creates dignity by default. Nor is it operating in a world where visibility guarantees support. It is operating in a world of constant interpretation, constant factionalism, and constant monetization of outrage. That means the institution's central challenge is no longer just ceremonial relevance. It is narrative control under conditions where control is almost impossible. So, if this debate proves anything, it is not that one side has settled the matter. It is that the monarchy's survival increasingly depends on whether it can distinguish between what is survivable and what is not. Public arguments, celebrity feuds, even partisan media wars, these are manageable. But inconsistency in the face of genuine institutional risk is not. And that is why the real question is no longer whether the monarchy is being criticized too harshly. It is whether it has learned, quickly enough, what kind of criticism actually matters.